do my HPS digital training, digital champion training. So you guys are aware of the training, so I won't get too much in the background, but basically I want to be able to explain why we're doing this, and then I'll introduce the audience now. Antoine Lesueur is the first digital champion candidate, so he's actually the recipient of the training today. Richard Lim is the digital champion, I guess. He's actually in charge of data and all the digital work that we do now, so he's going to be a customer for the training. And then Jay Labola, okay. She's the director of HR for North America, so she cares about training. So that's why they're all here. Okay, so digital champions, why are we doing this? So mainly, if in the past, I guess we've observed that people have ideas that have digital solutions, they're less common than some of the more practical physical improvements that we do in waste reduction programs or productivity improvement. So in these types of problems, they'll either say, I don't know where to go, and they'll just give up, or they'll assume, you know what, I'll just figure this out, and they'll come up with their own sort of rogue solution, which may or may not, fit well with the company's strategy, comply with our requirements, or translate well into other businesses. So we want to be able to do this together and give a voice to people with ideas, and then make those solutions fit better into our strategy. So digital champions can come from different places, but the main point is that they're not IT or IS people. When I say IT and IS, I mean information technology and information systems. So Richard, for example, is for Cohort Abrasives, he's our information systems expert and our champion. So he's managing that world. So I don't want him to have a double duty and do his role twice. He's got his expertise. Where Antoine is going to come in is that Antoine has got a lot of experience with the business, so he understands how we do things, why we do things from a business standpoint, and not necessarily what all the best digital solutions are. So he's meant to be really a jumping off point. So anybody that has an idea, they can articulate it to Antoine in their own language, as an operator, a manager, supervisor. They can just say what they kind of need, and then you'll see here in a minute that the digital champion's role then is to translate that into actionable business brief, is what we call it. And then Antoine, of course, you would interact with people like Richard or Becky Jennings, JB, and a host of others that I'll also share in a minute. So some of these skills, that we define here are clearly ones that people already are going to have if they're eligible for this, if they're where they are in their career from a business standpoint, like Antoine. He's been doing this for a long time, good presentation skills, good project management skills. He's already got a familiarity with a lot of things, in IT with SAP and those types of things, but it's not his primary role. I also want to point out, especially for my bosses, should they see this later, that this is only meant to be at most 10 to 20% of your time. So I would never envision you spending more than 8 hours in a given week, and typically less than that. So what are you going to do? Basically, I'm going to repeat what I just said, because you're going to be the entry point for everyone in Cohort Abrasives, and I'll show you the mechanism that we're going to use for that. You're going to basically document the reason we're doing it, the ROI. You want to help develop criteria on whether an idea can pass from one stage to the next. And then, challenging the status quo, I guess, is we don't want to say it's good enough. This is the way we've always done it. Like any problem, those are the worst hurdles sometimes to overcome. The tool we're going to use, and this is going to be the bulk of this next few minutes that I'm going to talk about, is the 3x3x3 methodology. So 3x3, the basically there are 3 stages that exist for any project or idea. So initially, you know, you got Dennis Mueller here, he comes up with an idea, and then he enters that in the portal. And so then within 3 days, Antoine's gonna take a look at that and say, yeah, this is a good idea, we should pursue it, or it could be a no-go. Like, no, we've already got that, here's the answer, you can feed that back. Or maybe I have some more questions about this, let me get back and to the originator and go from there. But basically, you get 3 days to either kill it or promote it. So once it's past that first go, no-go, and we say, yeah, this is what we want to do, and this is what it sounds like in a business brief or a more formal format, then you get 3 weeks then to set up the team and mock up your first solution. So the team, as I said before, could consist of people like Richard, me. It could have different people from the business or from ISIT, different regions. And in fact, I should point out that this process is already in place in Asia, South America, and Europe. So they're already more mature. They've got some networking done that we can kind of piggyback on right away, as well as stealing their ideas. Bottom line here, though, 3 weeks for that team to be assembled. It's going to happen kind of quickly. A few phone calls, a little bit of history, maybe a Kaizen, some problem solving, whatever. You come up with a mock-up of your solution. This is a potential solution. That's when you go back in and maybe you talk then to the sponsor of the project or the ultimate customers, the stakeholders. And again, you got to go, no go. Do we proceed? And is this a good solution? If you say yes, then that's the longest part of this process, is then you're given 3 months to actually put it in place. So that might sound like a lot, especially if you're Tarleton watching this, but it is absolutely not. That's probably the hardest time frame to meet on this list, because things happen, there's delays, there's queues, so that's kind of a critical time. But once that is put in place, that is your solution. So the last piece of it is just to confirm your savings, the viability of the project, is it really better? Kind of like validating a WCM project, and then you industrialize it. So at this point, Antoine's last duty as digital champion is to hand it off to the business, and you know, that'll also be a formal process, so it's not forever a project.
So I have a question, if I may. The proof of concept team during the setup, the second, so the 3 weeks is the team that's going to work on the prototyping, or is the team that's going to carry out the project throughout?
That's a good question, and the answer is not necessarily. So if it's the right people, and I would say most often it's probably going to be this prototyping will be a subset of the initial mock-up team, or maybe have 1 or 2 overlap people. But I see this as more of a transfer to ownership. So you're going to keep enough technical resources that you need to finish this, but really this is the business starting to assume responsibility.
So same thing for the budget. The budget is not just the budget for prototyping, it's the budget to get the whole project done, or both? This
is meant for the project. So you're going to say, well, our mock-up and prototyping is going to cost $16,000 for X, Y, and Z. Not so much the 2023 budget.
Okay.
I have a question on the proof of concept team. So that's where Antoine determines if this is a viable idea and we're going to move forward with this. How will he know what people to pull in on the team?
That's part of his training. So initially, that's an excellent segue. Let me switch really quick. Okay, so this is the HPS Digital site, which I refer to several times in here, but you know, here's just 3 topics: digitalization of workflow, internal quality reporting, bid waiver. There's about 217 already of these projects in here. 67 of them have been completed. So, you know, one of Antoine's, you know, when he gets into the first ones, you can go into all of these. I should have searched for a completed one, but you can see their original idea and the business brief that it was converted into, the project sponsor, IT leadership. So these are in different regions. So for example, Denise is in Europe. This is also useful because she speaks English and French, so that helps for networking. You know, Dan here only speaks English, so he may or may not fit on another project. But I think the first way you network is go through and say, here's a similar project, who was involved in it? You know, other than that, it's also going to be just 20 years with the company. He can say, oh yeah, you know what, I think, you know, Johnny in Denmark is good at this, or Phil in Portugal, or, you know, whatever. So I hope that answers your question. I guess the answer is how would you know who to put on any. In fact, you could put people on here who don't know. You know, obviously these are solutions we don't have. So some of the right people will be ones that don't have any idea what to do. Yeah. So the thing I just paused to show you is actually what I have next in the presentation. So I should have trusted myself on that. But also the database is pretty good. A lot of the heavy lifting is done for us, and that this already exists. So you can search by region, by project type, completed, what stage it's in, all of that stuff. And then I very importantly included the website. I think you've already been on it, but if you hadn't, it's captured there. And then this is just a little description of what we did. So the first, you know, I said you put it in plain English, but it could be in plain Spanish or French or Portuguese, we don't care. The business brief will be in English because that's probably going to be, you know, either a large national or an international team working on that, so we'll keep it in English. For now, I've structured this such that you would really be the one probably entering the idea. So we'll come up with a way of submitting them to you initially, and then at some point we'll want to open up the floodgates so that anybody can do it. But at this point, like in Europe, that I have an idea is like a giveaway. Anybody can do it. And we're just not ready for that yet. Maybe when we have 10 digital champions, we'll open it up. So yeah, I did put this together better than I thought. So this goes back to Jayla's question, how do you know who to add? There's already a bunch of projects that I said that have been started or have been completed, so you can get an idea of who's worked on what, just names. In fact, I had some questions this week earlier, and I had to go to France for one answer, and then she sent me back to Worcester, and then she sent me back to Poland. And but with Teams now, it's very easy. You can hit people up, and they respond often right away. The business brief that comes out of the idea is the first 3 days. That's the first 3. That might be on your test. And then, again, after that, you put the team together, work up a mock-up solution, come up with a budget, try things out, and 3 weeks for that. And then the last stage is your team is mostly agreed, the stakeholders, you have a solution that you like, you want to evaluate, so you put a prototype in place, maybe a pilot in one plant instead of doing it at all 6. And then at each gate between the stages, there's a go, no-go. And no-go's not really, I don't think that's too harsh, you know. Dennis is over here with his thumb down and he's very upset, but there really is no failure. So I want to encourage all ideas are good ideas. So we would send them back for more information or explain why it's not exactly a question we want to answer at the moment, but nothing's bad. Everybody's input is welcome. And then, of course, if it's a go, that means the stakeholders and the team members want to pursue it. So this is really just a reflection of, or a kind of a review of what we've already talked about. So 3 days to brief the case, 3 weeks to staff and mock up, 3 months to come up with a prototype. Another point I make on here, celebrate loudly and often, so I think we should, again, give positive feedback for idea submission. We should give positive feedback, and on the other hand, hold people accountable on the staffing and mock-up phase. You know, people that are contributing to this are expected to contribute and do it well. So we'll hold them accountable for that and then celebrate their success when it works. And then follow up, follow up, follow up. At the end of the day, this is really a half cheerleader, half project manager type of role. And so I think, you know, you being excited about it and giving that positive feedback, as well as monitoring the progress of the project is important. And then lastly, these are kind of self-evident, but you know, you want to maintain and grow your network. Yeah, I skipped over a couple of important things too. There are data confidentiality and cybersecurity elements to this that are in the prerequisites actually for this course. But since it's the first one, you haven't taken them yet perhaps. But we do have a little bit of basic cybersecurity that you have to know, and then of course, you know, a refresher on data confidentiality. And then those are formal courses which future cohorts will take before this class. And then a number of digital champions. Again, we're starting with one, but ideally we'd have at least one at each plant, and we'll grow from there.
Darin, what's the, people don't have any, hopefully this isn't in there, but what's the mechanism for the go, no-go thing? Well, is that Antoine just hit the button and says, nope, we're not gonna do this idea, and then it automatically goes back to the person, or?
No, that is in there, so you can stop it on the HPS site, but, you know, and the original idea generator is probably not gonna be on the staffing mock-up team a lot. So, you know, maybe if it's me, yeah, I have an idea, and then you would want to include me. Maybe you would very specifically want to exclude me from the staffing and mock-up team, you know, because I would contaminate the solution. So, whatever the makeup of the team is, I think the go, no-go is a specific, you know, action item in a meeting, saying, okay, you know, we've met on this 3 times before, everybody's done their actions, we're gonna make just like a stage gate meeting for product development. Say, yep, we're either gonna kill this and stop working on it, because we're not gonna keep throwing good money after bad, or we're gonna adopt it and move to the next stage. So it'll be a very formal yes. But I don't think it's a button with automatic response.
I was just thinking that you said anybody could go in and submit an idea on this, and, you know, our method of responding back to them, you know.
That's one reason I don't want to initially do that, because it isn't automated. So, you know, if we had 100 ideas come in tomorrow, we're not capable of responding to those. So I think let's manually enter them for a while. Once we get our feet on the ground, maybe we have 2 or 3 people helping Antoine, then we'll say, okay, Steve and Bill can enter all their own ideas, and then we'll add 2 on that. We'll grow from there. But you're right, I think we should automate that so that we never miss a feedback. So the next steps then specifically for Antoine in the certification here that we're working on is to do a practical demonstration of logging onto the SharePoint site. We'll do this later, and then entering your own idea, so you can just see from your, you know, from an idea generator's perspective what they're going to have to do. I will have a post-test that I'll also administer, which is just a written, basically review of what we've talked about here. And then I'll give you guys a little template, but basically I like to get some feedback from you on this training, and you know, if it answered the questions that you